This was the 100 Years' War, England's epic struggle against France. For more than 100 years, two mighty kingdoms, England and France, fought for power, pride, and the very crown of Europe. A war that began with ambition, was fueled by vengeance, and ended with nations reborn. It was a conflict that created heroes and martyrs, the Black Prince, Henry III, Joan of Arc, and left behind smoldering ruins where once stood empires. This is the story of the 100 Years' War, England's epic struggle against France, a century of courage, betrayal, and destiny that changed the medieval world forever. The Channel was England's once more. Then came Crécy, 1346, a name carved into legend. On a muddy field in northern France, the English army, tired, outnumbered, faced the might of French chivalry. But Edward III had a secret weapon, the English longbow. As French knights charged, waves of arrows darkened the sky. The rain of death shattered armor, pierced pride, and ended an age of glory. Thousands of knights fell. The flower of French nobility was crushed beneath their own horses. It was the birth of modern warfare, where skill and discipline triumphed over blind courage. Then came another enemy neither side could defeat, the Black Death. From 1347 to 1351, the plague swept across Europe, killing millions. Armies died where they stood. Villages vanished. Kings prayed. And still, the dead piled high. Even war itself seemed to stop to mourn. When it finally ended, both kingdoms were scarred. But the war was far from over. In 1360, the Treaty of Bretigny brought a fragile peace and gave England vast lands in western France. For a moment, Edward III stood triumphant. The King of England now ruled half of France. But victory in the Middle Ages never lasts for long. From the chaos of war rose a hero, Edward, the Black Prince. The eldest son of Edward III, he embodied the ideals of chivalry, brave, brilliant, and merciless in battle. At Poitiers in 1356, he faced the French king John II. Outnumbered once again, the English used cunning and terrain. And when the dust settled, France's king was a prisoner. The Black Prince brought him to London in chains, a living trophy. England rejoiced. France wept. For a generation, the English were masters of the battlefield, but power came at a price. The cost of endless campaigns, the blood of countless soldiers, and a kingdom stretched thin. To understand how the 100 Years' War began, we must return to a world of kings and feudal loyalties, where crowns were claimed by blood and steel. For centuries, English kings had ruled lands on both sides of the Channel. When William the Conqueror seized England in 1066, he brought with him vast estates in France: Normandy, Anjou, Aquitaine. But as France grew stronger under the Carpathian kings, England's power on the continent became a dangerous question. Who truly ruled these lands? The King of France or the King of England? By the early 1300s, the French crown had become a prize worth fighting for. When the last Capetian king died without a male heir, a crisis began. King Edward III of England, grandson of a French king through his mother, Isabella of France, saw his chance. He believed he had the rightful claim to the throne of France. But the French nobility had other plans. They crowned Philip VI, a cousin, and rejected Edward's claim. At first, Edward bowed politely. But pride is a dangerous thing for kings. In 1337, he raised his banner, declared himself King of France, and set Europe ablaze. The first clashes were not on land, but at sea. In 1340, the English fleet crushed the French at the Battle of Sluys. burning and boarding their ships. As the old Edward III grew frail, his son's health faded too. The Black Prince died before his father, leaving only a child, Richard II, to inherit a weary throne. The seeds of decline were already sown. France, though broken, did not die. Under King Charles V, called the Wise, the kingdom slowly rose again. He rebuilt its armies. He surrounded himself with capable men. None more feared than Bertrand du Guesclin, a brilliant and relentless general. Rather than face the English in open battle, he fought with patience. Guerrilla tactics, ambushes, attrition. Castle by castle, he took back what England had won. By 1380, the English dream of a continental empire was fading into smoke. When Charles V died, France was once again strong, and England was exhausted. Truces came and went. The next generation would inherit a world still haunted by war. Out of the turmoil of English politics rose a new warrior king, Henry V Young. Fierce, uncompromising, he united a divided realm and turned his gaze toward France once more. In 1415, he crossed the Channel with his army and faced overwhelming odds at Agincourt. Rain poured. Mud clung to armor. The French, confident in victory, charged again and again, only to be cut down by waves of English arrows. When the sun rose the next day, thousands of French knights lay dead. Henry's triumph echoed across Europe. He became the very symbol of English might, the warrior king of legend. Through cunning diplomacy and conquest, Henry secured the Treaty of Troyes in 1420. He married Catherine of Valois, daughter of the French king, and their unborn son was declared heir to both crowns. It seemed England's destiny was sealed, to rule both England and France. But fate had other plans. In 1422, at just 35 years old, Henry V died. His infant son, Henry VI, would inherit two kingdoms and the greatest war in history. France was collapsing. The English occupied half the country. The French crown, weak, divided, and leaderless. And then she appeared. A teenage girl from the village of Domremy, Joan of Arc. She claimed that God himself had spoken to her, commanding her to drive out the English and crown Charles, the rightful heir. At first, they laughed. A peasant girl leading armies? Impossible. But in 1429, Joan rode to the siege of Orléans, clad in armor, carrying her banner of the Virgin Mary. Her courage was contagious, her faith unshakable. The soldiers who had known only defeat now marched behind her, shouting, "For God and for France!" Against all odds, the siege was broken. The English fled. It was a miracle. Soon after, Charles was crowned King Charles VII at Reims, with Joan standing proudly by his side. But victory drew danger. In 1430, Joan was captured by the Burgundians, French allies of England, and sold to her enemies. The English accused her of witchcraft and heresy. After months of cruel interrogation, she was condemned. On a grey morning in Rouen, 1431, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. As the flames rose, she cried out, "Jesus! Jesus!" Her body turned to ash, but her legend would never die. France, inspired by her martyrdom, rose with new fury. Joan's death lit a fire that would consume the English dream. The tide had turned for good. Under Charles V, France reformed its armies. Professional soldiers, new artillery, discipline over glory. The English, meanwhile, were collapsing under the weight of politics and rebellion. Battle after battle, fortress after fortress, the French pushed them back. In 1450, at Formigny, French cannon thundered for the first time, crushing the English lines. 3 years later, the Battle of Castillon ended it all. The great English commander, John Talbot, was struck down by cannon fire, the last echo of medieval chivalry silenced by gunpowder. By the year 1453, the English were gone from France. Only Calais remained. After 116 years of war, destruction, and heartbreak, it was over. When the smoke cleared, Europe was forever changed. France, united, confident, reborn. England, weary and divided, soon to fall into its own civil war, the Wars of the Roses. The 100 Years' War had ended the age of knights and castles. Gunpowder, standing armies, and nationalism were the new order. From its ashes rose the modern nations of Europe, and through it all, legends endured. Edward the Black Prince, Henry V, and Joan of Arc, symbols of courage, pride, and faith. For more than a century, the kings of England and France fought for a crown. But, in the end, what they forged was something far greater. Nations, identities, a new world. The 100 Years' War was not a single war. It was 100 years of ambition, tragedy, and transformation. From its battles came the birth of modern Europe. If you're fascinated by epic history, make sure to follow and subscribe for more stories that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.